Welcome back, welcome back. Jeffrey Wright is a versatile and talented Emmy and Golden Globe award-winning actor, known for his roles both on stage and on screen. He's played CIA agent Felix Leiter in the last 2 Bond films, only the second actor in the history of the Bond franchise to play the role more than once. Jeffrey has also been busy away from the spotlight. He runs the Tyre Peace Foundation based in Sierra Leone, which aims to reassess the role of aid to Africa and to improve it. Jeffrey joins me from New York now to discuss his career and the progress made in Sierra Leone, and that's a country celebrating its 50th anniversary of independence. Didn't look as though it would make it a few years back, but it has. Welcome, Jeffrey. Very good to have you with us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Tell me, you've played a tremendous number of iconic roles like Martin Luther King, Mark Antony, U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell, and the James Bond character too, Felix Leiter. When you're playing a real person, and I suppose in that sense Martin Luther King is more of a real person than Felix Leiter probably, but in terms of, is it more difficult or is it easier to play a real person, a real iconic person, or are there different things to emphasize in the case of different people?
Well, I think it does present its own set of challenges. You feel, generally, if you're playing one of these characters, you feel a great deal of respect for them, a great deal of admiration. So there's the pressure to do the story justice, but at the same time, because you do have this template that is the real person's life to work off of, it gives you some parameters to work in that can make the job a little easier as well. If you're playing a fictional character, you kind of have freedom to create the thing in your own way. But at the same time, that freedom can be a little daunting as well because it's all up to the limits of your imagination. So each has its challenges, and each has its benefits as well.
Absolutely. And is there any difference in the difficulty factor, that in general it is more difficult to recreate a real character than, as you just said, have the freedom to recreate a new character, or are they both equally difficult or equally easy?
Well, at the end of the day, it's all acting, so there are far more difficult tasks in the world, but I think I'd say, the challenge, it's a bit more difficult doing a real character, historical figure, simply because you want to do homage to the character. You want to make sure that the story is told in a way that represents as completely and comprehensively, something about the essence of that character. Folks like Martin Luther King or Jean-Michel Basquiat, who was an artist I have tremendous respect for, and whose story had not been known to the wider world, really deserve, real care in retelling their stories. So that's something of a challenge.
It would seem, and some of the things you've said, that you really have more control of the final output on stage than you do in film, where there's a distinguished third party who's intervening in what will actually come out in the end on the film. Is that true, that you're more a master of your own destiny on the stage than in films?
Oh, absolutely. The stage is the actor's revenge against poor editing and bad directors on film. You work. The wonderful thing about working in film or working, as an actor is that it's collaborative. But also, one of the tricky things about it is that it's collaborative, or it can be tricky. On stage, I do consider work for an actor. The last play that I did was a new John Grier play here in New York, set in New Orleans at the time of the Louisiana Purchase in the early 19th century. It was about 2.5 hours, and I was on stage for most of the time. So it's one of those occasions where you can look the stagehands square in the eye and say that you've done a day's work because you're sweating just like they are. But at the same time as well, you're really entrusted with the narrative. You're entrusted with the story, and there's no one that gets in between your storytelling and the audience. Ideally, you've worked with a director who provides insight to you. The collaboration works smoothly. Most of the time I've worked with a director named George Wolfe lately in the theater. We have a wonderful relationship, personal and working relationship. So once the rehearsal process is over and he hands over to the play to me and the other actors, we really have the freedom to shape the time of the narrative. And that's a big responsibility for an actor, which you don't have to any extent in film. So I do very much appreciate the time that I have on stage to really flex, those muscles and communicate directly with the audience.
And in terms of a contrast that to do with the Tyre Foundation in Sierra Leone, Jeffrey, I mean, why Sierra Leone did you choose for this really worthwhile experiment?
Well, in some ways, my work in Sierra Leone, too, is revenge against some of my frustrations with the film industry. I had first traveled to Africa in 1996 and became aware of, the war down in Sierra Leone and Liberia at that point, and it was kind of existed on the periphery of my awareness. And then in 1999, while I was working on a film that I found particularly frustrating, I happened to see a documentary called Cry Freetown, which chronicled the January 6, 1999 invasion of the RUF rebel group into Freetown, Sierra Leone, the capital of the country. And I became really, really drawn into the story at that point, almost obsessed with what was happening there for a number of reasons. One of which was because the lives of young Africans there were being, damaged by the events around this war. And the war was fought for many reasons. One of the popular ideas is that it was fought over the control of the diamond-producing areas. That was part of it. There was a larger story at play there. But at the same time, in America, among young African-descendant urban youth, there was an increasing fascination with the diamond through bling-bling, hip-hop culture and the like. But there was no connection being made between these two groups of lives. And I became intrigued by that gap and started reading everything I could about the war. And then a year and a half later, I was in Mozambique working on another film called Ali, and met a gentleman also working on the film who was from Sierra Leone, had been involved with in the war there to some extent, and he invited me back with him. He was intrigued by my interest, and I was intrigued by him. He invited me back with him in June 2001. There were about 17,000 UN troops in country at the time. It was in the last phases of the war, still some skirmishes up country, but Freetown was relatively stable. But still, it was a pretty intense environment. And I went just to bear witness to what was happening because I was so fascinated by the events there. And really, that trip kind of changed the direction of my life. Subsequent trip in 2003, I discovered some scenarios and some opportunities that were compelling to me, particularly around natural resources there. Taya Peace Foundation is really the social or rural development vehicle for a larger commercial idea. Our company is called Taya Lion Resources. We're looking at opportunities in mining and also in agriculture, but doing it in partnership with local communities so that they are the beneficiaries of their natural resource potential. I was really struck by this disparity there between the potential, particularly the economic potential of the place, and the reality on the ground. Obviously, the war played a huge role in depressing the economy there and undermining the development of infrastructure and all the things that bolster, healthy economic and social environment. But as well, there are problems that predated the war, and so our focus now, our primary focus is on some mining opportunities that we're developing. We have some gold properties that we're exploring. We're really a junior mining company, a junior exploration company. But the differentiator for us is that our foundation is an investor in that company. So the foundation owns a significant equity stake in the company, and much of the value that's created through our exploration work and through the development of our commercial activities will be passed on to the local communities with which we're engaged. These are rural communities, largely cut off from the global community, but have real value to offer.
Well, good luck with that, and good luck with the foundation. It's a great pleasure to have you with us, Jeffrey, and we look forward to doing it again. All the best from here.
Well, I really appreciate your having me. Thank you. All the best to you.
Thank you. Jeffrey Wright there. Now from Sierra Leone we move a little south and east. Presidential elections will be held later this year in the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's a huge country with vast amounts of mineral wealth, yet most of its people are living in appalling poverty. Part of the reason has been a long drawn-out civil war, which continues in parts of the country even now. But in addition to that, much of the mineral wealth is stolen by militias and rebel groups and then shipped abroad. Medard Mulangala is an MP out there who has formed a new nationwide political opposition movement to President Joseph Kabila, which is expected to contest November's elections, which are going to be very dramatic in that case. I spoke to him earlier. You have great potential wealth in your country, and yet it doesn't get through to the people. Corruption at the moment rules in the way the country is run at the moment, doesn't it? Just corruption has taken over a lot.
That's a reality that we need to deal with. I think credible reports from international organizations all point to the fact that the DRC is not properly managed and that you find corruption at all levels. So that's that mentality that we need to change in order to move things forward. But again, when you talk about the minerals and the way they're being stolen, there are two situations. I would say we have on the eastern part of the country a situation where there's insecurity, where there is no control of the administration, where rebellious group, formed armed group, are the one involved in the day-to-day mining activity. That's one example that prevails in the eastern part of the country. On the other side, we have other contracts signed by the government, but in the implementation of the contract or in the negotiation, we are not doing the right thing to guarantee the best possible return for our country. So these are two different situations that need to be dealt separately. Let's talk about the eastern part of the country. The fact that the minerals are now being mined mostly by former military group makes it very difficult for the population there. And people are then exposed to human rights violation, enslavement, child soldiers being put into the army, and the rape of women. So you see, the fact that there's no proper control of the way these things are being done in the East opened the doors to many human rights violations that we all condemn.
In one of the papers here today, there's a headline, "Rape every 90 seconds in war-ravaged country." And that's about the Democratic Republic of Congo.
It's very bad news. But again, David, it shows one thing. This leadership has been there for almost 10 years now, and it's not been able to bring about peace and security in that part of the country. So the time has now come for us to stand up and say enough is enough. We need to be able to work together as opposition leaders in the country in order to make a no offer to the Congolese people, because what we've seen so far clearly shows that Kabila regime has failed to deliver. So, and that's an example of it.
Right. Do you know that these millions and billions that have disappeared that should have gone to the people of the DRC or to the government or whatever, the part that has been stolen, ravaged, whatever, I mean, is there one person behind all this crime, corruption and everything that you have to eliminate from somewhere? Is there one person who's the beneficiary? Who's Dr. No? Who is to use the
It is the regime. The regime has failed to deliver. And I think we now have an opportunity through democratic means to change the regime and to offer the Congolese a new hope for the future. So I don't want to point anybody in particular, but the regime has its own structure, has its own leaders, and everybody can see who should go for things to improve.
And would President Kabila, in fact, approve of the election taking place in the free way that you're talking about? Has he said, I agree yet, or not?
I think if the country is where it is today, it's because in 2006 we reached a consensus to say that, yes, let's go to the election. Today, I think amongst all the politicians, we have that same view that we need to go to the election because for many years, the crisis in the country was one of political legitimacy. So we want to be sure that we keep people legitimate. And so far, from what I've been hearing from everybody wants to go to the election, but which elections? That's the question. And we want to say the following. We want to have an election that is well conducted to avoid unnecessary trouble at the end of it. If the Commission says that we might need to extend, I say, why not? Because the key is to maintain stability in the country after the election, whenever they happen.
Thank you very much indeed, Medard. Obviously, you've got a frantic and difficult and challenging few months or even years ahead. We wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Medard Moulengula talking to me earlier there. And now to the subject of fish. Fish that's running out in this world. It's already become a symbol of fashion, but now Lady Gaga's lobster hat is on display in one of Britain's most famous stores, Selfridges, to highlight the issue of dwindling fish stocks around the world. Not enough fish. The latest research shows that the world is eating more fish than ever before, overexploiting over a third of our stocks. At its simplest, the world is running out of fish. So, what needs to be done? Well, I'm joined now by the chef and food campaigner, Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall, who is going to reveal all, are you not?
I'll do my best. I mean, it's difficult to talk comprehensively about the problem because it's not always fully understood what's happening out at sea. And that's partly because of one of the problems that I'm most exercised about, and that is what's come to be known as discards. And this is the waste of good fish. This is the amount of good fish that could be landed, but that isn't, either because of the commercial motivation of the fishermen, or frankly because of crazy political rules that mean that once quotas are met, fish that's caught beyond that quota is wasted. So we have two...
Is it wasted at sea or before it's brought into land, or is it also wasted on land?
Most fish that gets to land is put to one use or another. So you could question some of those uses, what's called industrial use, the forming of fish into fertilizers and pet foods and things like that. But there's also about 8 million tons of fish that's discarded at sea. I say about because it's very hard to measure, but
yes.
it's at least that figure. And this is fish that's thrown away because it isn't the target species of the fishermen, or because in Europe they're not allowed to land it because of our, rather, I would say, insane common fisheries policy, which means that once you've caught a certain amount of cod, you're not allowed to catch any more cod. You can go on fishing for other species, but if you do catch more cod, you're obliged by law to throw it back to sea. And that's the specific problem in Europe that I've been campaigning against.
And what would you do to stop that?
Well, I'd make
or reduce it.
We're calling for it to be banned, for the practice to be banned, as it has been already in Norway. That does then involve further amending of the legislation, because you need to make sure then that people aren't incentivized to overfish the stock. But basically they should draw their quota from fish that they catch, not merely from fish that they land.
And are the fish that are thrown back, someone said, are they alive or dead?
Well, it's an absolutely reasonable question, because if we were throwing back fish that were surviving, it wouldn't really be a problem. But there are at least 90% of them are dead. There are one or two tough-ish species, like dogfish, which is a kind of small shark, and a few of the smaller rays that may survive the process of discarding. But all the main demersal fish, the cod and the haddock and the smaller fish, the rate is about 90% dead. The survival rate is minimal to practically irrelevant.
And if something isn't done or whatever, if today's circumstances were to continue, how soon would the world run out of fish?
Well, that has been a question that scientists have applied themselves to specifically, and various estimates have been made. Perhaps the most alarming is that by the middle of this century, less than 40 years from now, all the major fisheries of the world would be in a critical state, would no longer be able to supply consistent fish that could be used in anything like the way it's used at the moment. So what we're saying is fisheries, as you said in your introduction, fisheries on the brink of collapse all over the world, and if things continue in their current trend, 30 or 40 years from now, all the major fisheries either collapsed or on the brink of collapse.
40 years?
40 years. It's a kind of time frame that should sharpen the mind a little bit.
So who should act on this? Should it be politicians? Should it be ecologists? Should it be customers? I mean, who should do something about it? Does it need to be the most powerful man in the world or whatever?
Well, obviously, if we had that magical person who did rule the world, then there might be a few sweeping measures that they could enact, but obviously it isn't like that. And so I would say the answer to your question is everyone needs to act. Everyone who eats fish needs to be aware that some choices that they make are much more sustainable than others. And there are increasingly meaningful labels out there in the marketplace that allow you to make a more responsible choice. So we can choose, for example, Marine Stewardship Council certified fish around the world. That label now has meaning. And we can choose certain species. We can also choose not to eat certain species that are being hit really hard, unless we know they come from sustainable stocks. And one of the things we perhaps need to do, particularly in Britain and America, is be less obsessed with certain species. I mean, in the UK, salmon, tuna and cod represent, just 3 species represent more than half the fish that we eat as a nation. So we need to spread the load across the sea, and that would allow us to find a market for many of these species that are being discarded, that are good food, but that are being thrown back, often because the consumer doesn't really recognise their food value.
And so which are the most vulnerable fish that round the world our viewers eat and enjoy that are the most vulnerable?
Well, perhaps I'm, of course, most familiar with the ones we have a problem with here in Europe, and there are things like skates and rays and cod that we need to eat with great caution. One thing one could steer people towards globally is the eating of small oily fish, the kind of pelagic fish like herring, mackerel, sardines and anchovies, which are very fast growing, fast to reproduce, and if well managed can remain abundant in our seas for years to come. Unfortunately, these are also the fish that are targeted industrially and that are used for grinding up into fish meal, for processing into fertilizer. They have even been known to be used to fuel power stations, which seems to me to be an insane use of a resource that is an excellent human food.
Well, thank you very much indeed for this. It was absolutely fascinating and important. Anyway, that's it for this week, I'm afraid. My thanks to all my guests. Do join us again in just 7 days' time from now for another Frost Over the World. Bye-bye for now.